Hello everyone. Today we'll be discussing about localization of the strokes. I've divided this lesson into different parts, and this is a really high yield topic for the USMLE exams. So without a delay, let's start this lesson. My name is Dr. Susan Capley, and here we go. So in this part one, we'll be talking about the Circle of Willis and how the different brainstem syndromes are named. So first of all, let's talk how the blood is supplied to the brain. So if you see here, as the blood ejects through the aorta divides into brachiocephalic artery, and then the right it gives rise to the common carotid and the right subclavian. Similarly, the other aortic branches are the left common carotid and the left subclavian. Although this left subclavian seems a bit below than it is usual, this is just for the graphical purpose. So from these subclavian arteries come the vertebral arteries. The vertebral arteries, they branch from the subclavian and then they ascend upwards, and then they end up supplying different areas of the brain. So one is this vertebral artery that is supplying major part of the brain stem, and the other is the internal carotid artery, as we'll see. So this blood supply to the brain, we call it this circle of Willis. So if you see here, the vertebral artery is coming from below and then combining together to form a basilar artery. Vertebral artery has a branch called anterior spinal artery, and the other branch is the posterior inferior cerebral artery, or the pica. And the basilar artery has a branch that is called anterior inferior cerebral artery, or ICA. And then as the basilar artery is coming to an end, it gives off two branches. These are the posterior cerebral arteries. Just below the posterior cerebral arteries, we have superior cerebellar artery. Now the internal carotid artery, it divides into the middle cerebral artery and the anterior cerebral artery. And the artery that combines the posterior cerebral with the middle cerebral artery is the posterior communicating artery, whereas the artery that combines the two anterior cerebral arteries is the anterior communicating artery. There is a artery missing in this photo, the middle cerebral artery also gives rise to these small branches called the lenticulostriate arteries. All right, so as I just showed the photo of circle of Willis, you can see how it ascends in the brainstem and reaches the brain. So you can see here that the major portion of the brainstem, including the medulla, pons, and the midbrain, is supplied by the vertebro-basilar arteries. Now, what I just told can look really complicated at the first sight, but drawing circle of Willis is pretty easy. It's like drawing a human being. So let's see. So first you draw, just wait a minute. First you draw the face, and then you draw the trunk, and then two legs. This human being has no neck, so we directly start drawing the upper arms. And in between here, two lower appendages, there is this groin. There are two extra appendages. This is an alien, so there are two extra appendages coming from the lower limbs, two from the upper trunk, two from the lower trunk, and then there are some small appendages in between. Now we draw the eyes, and then draw a line from here, from both the eyes outwards, right? And while we draw the line, we draw three small appendages from the ears as well. And now we draw the hair. This alien has just two hairs, and these ears are connected by this head. Okay, so this is all. So it is pretty easy to draw. So if we start labeling it, then this is the anterior cerebral artery, this is the anterior communicating artery, this is the middle cerebral, this is lenticulostriate, this is the internal carotid artery, this is posterior communicating, this is posterior cerebral, this is superior cerebellar artery, this is the ICA, this is vertebral artery, this is anterior spinal artery, this is pica, and lastly this one in the middle, the trunk, is the basilar artery. So it's pretty easy. All right, so as these arteries ascend upwards, they are supplying to different areas of the brain, right? Mainly up to the basilar artery, it is just supplying the brainstem. So the brainstem supply can be divided into three parts. Firstly, the topmost part is supplying the midbrain, the middle is the pons, and at the bottom we have the medulla. Now we can divide this supply into the right and left halves, and each half we can divide into the lateral and medial portions. We have the syndrome names according to this only. All right, but I've not written anything in the midbrain because the midbrain syndromes are not named like lateral or medial midbrain syndromes. There is some other nomenclature, so I'll be discussing about that in the later slides. So if we see here, the posterior inferior cerebellar artery or pica is supplying the lateral part of the medulla, and hence if it is occluded, then we have lateral medullary syndrome, which is also called the Wallenbach syndrome. And if anterior spinal artery is occluded, it is supplying the medial medulla. So if it is occluded, then it is called medial medullary syndrome or Deserine syndrome. Now if we have the involvement of the basilar artery, which is supplying the medial part of the pons, medial pons, so it is called medial pontine syndrome or Foville syndrome. If there is involvement of anterior inferior cerebellar artery, which is supplying the lateral pons, then we call this lateral pontine syndrome or Marie-Foix syndrome. And for the posterior cerebral artery, which is supplying the major portion of the midbrain, we have different midbrain syndromes. All of them kind of result from the occlusion or involvement of the posterior cerebral artery. There are 5 different syndromes that are named: Weber syndrome, Benedict syndrome, Clot syndrome, Perinaud syndrome, and Noth-Nagel syndrome. So that's it for today's presentation, guys. So I'll be talking about the different syndromes in the upcoming classes. Thank you. Have a good day.